You shall not pass!
Vincent? Vincent!
What?
Hey, where did you get that?
One ring to rule them all.
Give it to me.
No!
My precious! No, where's my precious? Where is it? Ah!
Dick.
Hello, welcome back to Review the Nerds. I'm Mike. Oh!
And I'm Vincent. And today, on today's episode, we're reviewing today we're reviewing The Hobbit, The Battle of Five Armies.
I'm gonna get that ring back at some point.
Whatever, Mike. Whatever. Now, let's get all Tolkien on our fans.
Sting! Yes, I'm not a nerd at all.
Yeah. By the way, I accidentally altered Sting. He now will also glow blue if Jehovah's Witnesses come by.
Well, this is the final chapter in a film series that we've been enjoying now since, I think, 2001?
It's been a long, long road.
Yes.
Not as long as the movies make it out to be, but really effing long. Yeah.
Yeah, so Lord of the Rings trilogy, every year it felt like a holiday for those movies to come out. Like, it was only one time a year, and the whole year you'd be waiting for it to come out. Those movies were so good, and it just felt like a treat every year. And Return of the King, obviously, swept the Oscars, very deservedly so.
When the movies first came out, it was really exciting because it was kind of like, I don't know, at the time we still had Harry Potter was happening, but Harry Potter was still like early on, so Harry Potter was still more kind of kiddie at the time, I want to say. Of course, Harry Potter grew and evolved because it was character development, just the way the books were. The books grew up as characters. But if you didn't want to wait, if you were only a little older like I was, you had Lord of the Rings to go see at theaters because it was older, a little more older material at the time. Not that the Lord of the Rings doesn't have its soft moments, its laughs, and, of course it does,
Like the Hobbit's jumping up and down the bed.
Yeah.
Yay, Mr. Frodo!
Yeah. But it was really great. I mean, there's this world where it's like sword and sorcery, but the magic doesn't get too crazy like in Harry Potter. I mean, there's definitely some moments. I mean, no one's going to argue that Gandalf is a incredibly powerful wizard. You had really interesting heroes. You had characters who weren't heroes, but by the end of the story, they definitely earned their hero titles. You had the characters who weren't sure who they are and what their destinies are, and then by the end of the film, they find that courage to grasp their own destiny. Just great themes. An interesting villain, just because the Dark Lord, we only see him once in a physical form at the beginning of the movie when we're getting the background, and, he's definitely menacing. But then the rest of the film, he's just this giant burning eye, which, don't get me wrong, is freaky, but you're like, wow, that's a weird antagonist. But still, you're scared because he commands entire armies of orcs and creatures and, the ring race. Oh, those are, monstrous motherfuckers.
Yeah. That story was just so easy to get swept up in it. I mean, it just was so engulfing. All the characters were rich, and you felt like you knew these people. It was just shooting in New Zealand, such a beautiful landscape and countryside out there. You'd think that they shot in several different countries with all the options they had. It was just a beautiful looking film.
Yeah.
And it's just every level of production was top quality. You had the top of the line special effects. Obviously, the creation of Gollum was a huge,
oh yeah, that thing made Andy Serkis's career. I'm sure he had a career before it, but now, when you think motion capture, you think Andy Serkis.
And
he's so synonymous with now.
Yeah, that evolved visual effects to a whole new level. And the music was fantastic. Howard Shore, fantastic score.
All the hymns and stuff, great. Yeah.
You have a fantastic cast. There's not a weak link among those people. They are all great actors. And it's just, when I was watching it, I was just so moved by it. And, because sometimes it is incredibly emotional and dramatic. Like, it feels like a war movie sometimes. It has the same level of drama and epic feelings to it as you would get in Saving Private Ryan or something like that. It just felt huge. Like when Boromir died at the end of Fellowship of the Ring. Oh, yeah. That broke my heart. The scene, it's got to be one of the best death scenes in all history. Where he keeps getting shot with arrows, he keeps getting back up, and then boom, he gets shot again. That was awesome. It was so cool.
Yeah, it's like at the end of Macbeth, where he goes out fighting and he kind of regains some of his honor in a sense.
Yeah. No, that was really cool.
Except better. Yeah, a little bit better.
He has such iconic people. Great job, Peter Jackson, and that is definitely something that will go down in history. And so popular that Peter Jackson decided that he wanted to try to cash in on The Hobbit. book, which is the shortest book in the entire series.
Yes.
Written before Lord of the Rings, and it was intended for children, which doesn't really fit with the cinematic world that Peter Jackson built with the Lord of the Rings, so they decided to darken it up a little bit.
Tolkien based a lot of ancient mythology about it. Like I've heard people who've seen the Hobbit movies recently ask why is the dragon guarding the gold? Well, that's actually based on actual old time mythology. Dragons would find treasures and they would protect it. Like in the story of Beowulf. Beowulf dies finding a dragon who's stealing gold and treasure and stuff and keeping it to itself. So that's based on real stuff. So Tolkien knew what he was talking about when he was creating this world. He used tons of references from the mythology that he grew up on. I mean, hell, he even actually invented the Elven language. I mean, that's how deep he got into stuff.
He has whole sections like appendices, and he even released a Silmarillion book that covers a whole bunch of the history of Middle-earth. He has everything dating back to the very beginnings of how Middle-earth was created. But moving on to The Hobbit, as I said, it was kind of okay, what else can we make money off of this property with? Well, we still have this Hobbit book to adapt. But no one's going to want to see a children's version of this story, so let's darken it up a little bit. Now, the one thing about this, the one saving grace that Peter Jackson has as an argument with this is that J.R.R. Tolkien, before he died, he had intended to go back and rewrite The Hobbit to make it more in line with what he was doing with Lord of the Rings. That was apparently something he desired to do, but he passed away before he could finish his first draft, I think it was. And so Peter Jackson defends what he's doing with these movies as saying, well, J.R.R. Tolkien was going to probably do it anyways. But there's still a lot of purists out there that aren't very happy with where they took it. And it's very strange to take the shortest book in the entire series and stretch it out into close to 3-hour films.
Yeah, because at first, when it was first announced they were going to do this movie, it was they were just going to break it into 2 parts, which, that's become very popular nowadays with book adaptations. I mean, we've seen it all the time. Hell, I mean, in several years from now, we're going to get Avengers 3, and that's going to be a 2-parter. But then it was announced that, no, they're going to stretch it out even further. Now, even though it's the shortest book, I can see them stretching out into 2 movies, just to get all the details in there. Because, I mean, just like many fan bases, especially Tolkien fan bases, just because as we were discussing earlier, Tolkien puts so much detail into this universe, just not what happened in the books, but events that happened hundreds, thousands of years before the events in the books. So, I'm sure the fans were kind of okay, 2 parts, all right. 2-part movie, cool. But then when you stretch it into 3, oh, they're going to start making some shit up.
Oh, they did a lot of that.
Yeah.
Originally, Guillermo del Toro was going to direct it. They had conceptual designs, they had all these things that Guillermo del Toro put into it, but then they had to pull the plug. They didn't get to start production when they originally planned to. He was waiting too long. He had other projects he wanted to do. So he moved on, and Peter Jackson originally was going to try to find someone else, but then he went, you know what? Screw it, I'm just going to do it. I think originally he was just worried of having to get stuck in a 3-picture deal again and spend so much time and investment seeing that through. You sometimes wonder, though, when you're watching the movie, how much of what we're seeing maybe Guillermo del Toro could have had some say in.
Right. Guillermo del Toro is a fantastic director. All his creature designs and all the movies he's done, I mean, they're just great. And it would have been exciting. It definitely would have been.
There's a lot of anticipation for it. And honestly, a lot of people don't like this new Hobbit movies as much as the Lord of the Rings, and I will agree with that. They're not as good. But the first part, I had fun with. I did have fun with the first part. There was a lot of things in that made me think back on the book and the old cartoon short from the 70s, I think it was. The greatest adventure is the one that lies ahead. Anyone know that? Did you ever see that? The cartoon from the 70s?
When I was 4.
Yeah, but there's all these scenes, like when the dwarves first come to the Shire and they knock on Bilbo's door and they all pile in and they eat his food. I remember that so vividly. And meeting Gollum for the first time, the whole back and forth with the riddles, I remember that very vividly. So the first part I really liked.
The first time, it was cool. It was fun. I definitely thought I can still feel the spirit of a kid's book in this movie, because like you said, the scene where they pile into Bilbo's house, I mean, first they're showing up one at a time, and then, yeah, I mean, you got Bilbo, who's not an adventurer. I mean, apparently he was very adventurous when he was a child, but now he's very settled in now that he's an adult. And, he's totally against it, but they convince him, and he decides that he can't pass this up, because, when are you going to get another opportunity like this? The adventure goes on, and he has to not only prove himself to the dwarves that he belongs in this group, but gotta prove something to himself because like he's scared shitless through most of the film at stuff. But he's very intelligent. He's very quick-witted, and that's definitely one of his great assets.
Well, that's of course why you got to thank some of the casting for him. Martin Freeman.
Oh, Martin Freeman, he's great.
He's great.
Awesome.
And I will even go so far as to say that even though I think Lord of the Rings is far superior, I do think that Martin Freeman is a better lead than Elijah Wood. Ooh. I'm sorry, Elijah Wood. Dude, you've been part of my movie watching experiences for many years, but Martin Freeman just brings such a charisma and humor to that role. I think Bilbo's a much more fun character to watch. Frodo had a lot of backing. Like, he had a lot of supporting characters that held him up, kind of. Yeah. But Bilbo, you could just stay with Bilbo all by himself. He's still awesome to watch. Like, whenever he gets lost from the dwarves at random moments, he's still funny to watch. He's very goofy and kind of bumbling. And, yeah, he's great. Martin Freeman is awesome in that role.
When we get into the second film...
Desolation of Smaug.
Exactly. We finally get to see this feared dragon that took over the mountain, and it's just...
The Lonely Mountain. But here's the thing that's frustrating about that, is that it takes for fucking ever to get to that point. They bloat the shit out of the second story. Like, you have all this stuff that never ever happened. Like, Legolas was never in The Hobbit, neither was Evangeline Lilly as Tauriel. That's a totally made-up character. She never existed.
However...
prior to that.
I don't mind seeing Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah, she is a very beautiful woman. I'm not, and also she's good. She's good, by the way. There's nothing against her acting wise. She's good. It's just though that it's extra screen time that they're spending on all these added bloated characters when they don't really fit into the main story. And unfortunately, I have a big issue with Keeley and Tauriel's romantic relationship.
Yeah, because he starts it out by making a joke about. He makes a joke about what's in his pants, basically. And I don't know. I guess just because dwarves are so... I don't know. I think that that's the basis of their, like, odd and seemingly forced relationship. It just seems like they've thrown in there just throw some, romance in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing that I would see of her being attracted to him is, Keeley, he's a good guy, but the only thing I could see that maybe initially she found attractive about him is because, dwarves and elves naturally are very different. No elf would make a joke about something in his pants, so maybe it's kind of like a Han Solo, Princess Leia kind of thing, like she doesn't have a man like that in her world, so maybe that's what it is, but I don't know, this seems too quick.
So, their relationship... I don't know if you count how many times they actually interacted on screen together, like where they actually talked. In just talking to him a couple times, loved him so deeply and so much that she was willing to risk everything to go and protect him. I don't buy that relationship at all, man. Evangeline Lilly's motivation in the entire series is to basically just make sure he's okay. That's just such a cheap, stupid motivation. I'm not really a fan. I'm a fan of her. I think she does a great job with what she has, but I'm not a fan of how they handle her character, really. If you got rid of the whole romantic relationship, it would have saved so much time. Now, I don't want to say that all of Peter Jackson's changes to Tolkien's story are bad. There are a few exceptions, like, for instance, expanding the character of Bard the Bowman, played really well by Luke Evans.
Luke Evans, yeah, he's been popping up on a lot of stuff. He was in the last Fast and Furious film. He was in that Dracula Untold film, which was not a good Dracula film, but he did a good job in it. I like him a lot as an actor. He has a very good on-screen presence, and I believed his character. I like that. I know there's a lot of stuff in this film that they bloated out or blown up more than it was in the book, but his character I really enjoyed. So I'll be honest, I didn't mind him having a larger role.
It's not just one thing isolated, it's all the things combined. They are prolonging the story so much longer than it needs to be. It takes forever to get to Smaug. And then when they finally get to Smaug, they prolong this really goofy, cartoony action sequence that lasts forever, and finally, right when he's about to bust out and destroy Lake Town at the very end, you're like, oh, finally we're getting somewhere, and then it ends.
Yes.
They suddenly cut it right when they're getting to the part you actually want to see.
Yeah,
and structurally, it's very frustrating, because you have the conclusion to that scene happen in this movie.
Exactly, that's the point, yeah. For me, we already know in the third movie, the big finisher is going to be the battle of the 5 armies come together to try to take... over the
Lonely Mountain so they can get the gold.
Exactly. So why not finish the second one with the big slaying of the dragon? Why? Did they just want to fit all the big stuff in the third one? I guess that's what they were trying to do. But I would have. If we're going to finish this, we want these movies to be each one of them great. So I would have totally finished Desolation of Smaug with the slaying of Smaug. I think it just would have made more sense. You could have cut out a little bit, cut out a few scenes here and there. I mean, just to cut down the time on it. I mean, like, you know, mostly cut down the stuff happening inside the mountain, maybe a few of the stuff in Lake Town.
There is a whole bunch of stuff they could have cut down.
I guess they just wanted to finish the second one with a feeling of dread and like loss, and I mean that works. I mean that work. I mean when you're doing a movie franchise where stuff is getting like, you know, going into the third one, you want to end things off with that feeling of dread and like maybe the good guys are losing, like at the end of Empire Strikes Back or like the end of The Matrix Reloaded or stuff like that, where things are pretty bleak right now, and then you can't wait to see the third one to see what's going to happen. The only problem is we know what's going to happen. You're going to slay the dragon, the 5 armies are going to come, it's going to be a big battle, Thorin's going to deal with shit, and Bilbo's got to find his place in all this chaos. So we already know. It's not like in other movies where we don't know what the hell's going to happen next.
Yeah.
That's
just because they want to milk the story for everything that they could. Benedict Cumberbatch, he was hired to voice 2 characters actually in this series. People may not completely recognize, but he does Sauron, the Necromancer, and he also does Smaug. And the intention, I think, is to kind of make like a bridge connection between those 2 characters in a way, because they're like the dark forces of the whole film series.
Well, Sauron is basically the Satan character of this universe, and you know, Satan in the Bible is described as being a great dragon in the Book of Revelation. So that I think that was a cool little like Christian link-up thing going on there.
Yeah, and Benedict Cumberbatch does a great job. I mean, his vocal talents are crazy. So Smaug is they do a great job with that. Weta are the people that have been doing the visual effects. They are a New Zealand visual effects company. He looks great. He really does look good.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, when he opens that mouth, you see those rows of fangs. Oh God, they look scary to me. Let me tell you.
Though I do kind of miss Gollum, Andy Serkis. Just he steals the show every time he comes on. But yes, Benedict Cumberbatch filled in the CGI creature quota.
So they start the movie out with Smaug. He's attacking Lake Town, and okay, cool. And Bard, he takes him out with the last black arrow. These special arrows that can pierce dragonhide.
They had a practical set that they had pyrotechnics going off on and stuff like that. That all looked really good. Stephen Fry as the master of Lake Town. Pretty funny scene where he's trying to get away in a boat filled with gold and the dragon just falls on top of him and crushes him. That was good. Then we move on to another bloated storyline that, by the way, causes some incredible continuity issues. Where Gandalf the Grey has found where Sauron the Necromancer is hiding out, and he's been imprisoned and captured by Sauron and his orcs. And it's like, wait a second. So, you're saying that in The Hobbit that Gandalf was completely aware of Sauron's resurrection, and aware that he was looking for the One Ring, and yet, in the Lord of the Rings films, he acts shocked when he finds out Sauron's back. It's like, that doesn't make it doesn't fit with the way Gandalf was acting in the first Fellowship of the Ring movie. Because you got the impression that he thought Sauron was long gone.
The only cool part about it is that this gives a cool little action scene with Saruman, Galadriel, and Elrond, in which they're taking on, you know, the 9 ghosts, which I assume are that become the ring race.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you already know that Elrond is going to be a hell of a warrior. We've seen him in battle before, but it's just always still cool to see him swinging that elvish curved blade sword he's got. And then we can see Saruman. Who, you know... Christopher Lee, and a great Christopher Lee, who was a huge Lord of the Rings fan growing up, and he had a lot of creative consultation on Lord of the Rings movies, and I'm sure that they also got him back for that. And, I mean, the only time we saw him battle was that wizard battle in the Fellowship of the Ring, where him and Gandalf were going at it. But this time, we see him doing some, like, martial arts stuff, where he's swinging his wizard staff, he's blasting with, like, magic, he's, you know... cracking, smashing, you know, he's going at it.
Pretty much doing the same technique they did in the Star Wars movies, where they would just composite his face over a much younger guy doing all the physical movements.
That or like the long hair and the beard pretty much covers it up. If you look at that scene, you see a lot of his back and not much of his front.
Well, I heard that Christopher Lee was so frail and old that they actually shot most of his scenes back. I think they shot them in London because he couldn't travel, I heard, to New Zealand.
Well, yeah, he's up there in age.
Yeah, but it's good to have him back, but the capacity they brought him back in was kind of... it felt like a very fan service scene. Like, it felt like, of course, people are going to want to see all these people get together.
And Galadriel, she like kicks some butt too. She exhausts all her magical power to exile Sauron back to the Darklands.
Which, by the way, I didn't know she was that powerful. Like, you're so powerful, you can take down, Sauron.
Well, he's not completely fully developed again.
I guess, but...
And even then, remember, she had to be, like, rushed off. I mean, she looked like she was about to, like, fall into a coma or something.
Yeah.
Which the only indication that she had that much power was when the Fellowship of the Rings, where there's that moment she was about to take the ring from Frodo, and she goes into, like, that dark freak-out mode. And so you can tell that she has a ton of power in her, but not until this scene do we see just exactly how much power. I mean... Yeah. I mean, the hardcore Tolkien fans, if you're watching this and there's anything in the books to indicate that she had that level of magical ability to combat, Sauron, even in a weakened state, let us know. Leave it in the comments, because I'd be interested to check out that passage. Yeah.
Well, then connected to this, though, the whole Sauron as a necromancer in this castle, you have his orc army that is basically doing his bidding. And the leader of this orc army is called Azog the Defiler, played by Manu Bennett. And that's a whole addition kind of too. There was like a group of orcs that were chasing the hobbits in the book, but it was never so well clearly defined on, what their motives were.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much they just wanted to kill the dwarves just for the hell of it. We don't like dwarves, we're going to kill them. In this movie, they give this huge reason that Sauron is trying to basically mess up the politics of the world and try to gain control over the Lonely Mountain and the what's that thing called? The Arkenstone, and everyone's trying to get the Arkenstone, which Thorin is obsessed over.
Yeah, it's like not as wanted as the Precious, but like just right under.
And that takes us to Thorin, and he now has his kingdom back, but he's completely losing his mind trying to find the Arkenstone.
Yeah, he's got dragon sickness, which is the same thing that happened to his grandfather, made him greedy and care more about the vast treasures that they had more than their people. So, like, it's kind of like, it's a parallel to Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings, where Aragorn was, wondering, like, am I like my ancestor? Can I resist the ring? Can I find the strength within me? Whereas Thorin dips right into it, unfortunately. He gets out of it by the end of the film, but you see him, like...
It's a bit of a journey.
You see him just, like discard his honor for a large part of the film, as if it was just some kind of, like, a coat he could take off. Some interesting character development there. And you can see it start in Desolation of Smaug, but here he goes full blown, where he's like paranoid that everybody's against him. Everyone's trying to steal his treasure, and he damn near kills Bilbo. He fucking just throws him off the mountain at one point.
Bilbo has the Arkenstone, but he's like, dude, you're fucking losing it, man. I'm not giving this to you. So Bilbo, to try to prevent this huge battle that's about to happen, because the humans and the elves, led by Thranduil. By the way, Lee Pace was Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Just a little tidbit. Both their armies, they're about to attack this kingdom because they want some of the jewels and gold within, and Thorin is being selfish. Even though he promised the humans he would give them some of it, he's now granting them nothing. And Bilbo, to try to stop an all-out war, he crosses the line and gives the Arkenstone over to them as a way to have leverage to get Thorin to let them have some of their take on the gold and everything. Graham McTavish as Dwalin, really cool, I like that character. He's kind of like, you're losing it, man. And also Balin, the older dwarf played by Ken Scott. Balin is the cousin of Gimli, and he's the tomb that they find in Moria in Lord of the Rings. He's the one that's dead inside that tomb.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I didn't hear that. Oh.
After the events of The Hobbit, he and a bunch of dwarves go back to Moria to try to retake it back from the orcs and goblins, and then at some point they managed to, but then there was another team, another wave that came in to try to take it back again, and he got killed during that. And that's where you find that kingdom in the Lord of the Rings, the movie. But yeah, unfortunately, Balin does not have a very happy future ahead of him.
Well, that's unfortunate, because he's a very likable character. He's like the wiser, older dwarf that, like, puts people in their place, or like educates them when they don't know something.
These armies, they're about to attack. They're about to go after Thorin's kingdom, and then out of nowhere, another dwarf backup comes. It's Thorin's, I think, second cousin who comes in, who is played by Billy Connolly, Dane.
Billy Connolly is cool. A lot of the Boondock Say fans will know him as Papa Boondocker. But it bothered me. I liked having him in the movie because I think he's a cool actor, and I like his voice. But his character was just mostly CGI. You're looking at him, I don't know. Half the time, it just seemed like he was all CGI. Like, I felt like the actual actor was almost never on set. It was weird.
Part of it is that acting alongside people that are supposed to be twice your size, and I'm sure that they use a lot of CGI to accommodate that. And then, right when they're all about to fight each other, guess who comes in to break it up? The orcs. They are attacking.
Dicks.
And now suddenly all these people that were about to kill each other must band together to fight this orc threat. So in a way you could say that's a good thing the orcs showed up, because if the orcs didn't show up, then all these people would have killed each other.
Yeah.
Which would have been sad.
Gives them a common enemy, but still just lots of bloodshed to come, a lot of lives going down.
And here is where the story ends. And the action begins.
Yeah.
There's 30 minutes of story, and then there's about a 2-hour finale of action.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, there are some little moments where it gets broken up, where Thorin has his epiphany, about he realizes how much the treasure has warped his mind. He has this little like psychedelic scene where like
he's sinking in his treasure.
Yeah, he's sinking into the gold, and it's like consuming him, and it breaks up. Which that's cool. I mean, it's a little weird. If the scenes feel a little weird, but it works, I guess.
Hey, Richard Armitage, I really liked him as Thorin. I thought he did a great job. He was pretty much the Strider of the movie, the Aragorn of the movie. But in the book, he was actually a very old dwarf. Like, he wasn't an action hero at all. They kind of younged him up a little bit. They made him a little more attractive to appeal to the female demographic.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of gray in his hair. You can see a little bit, but not a whole lot. I mean, I would say, to me, the character in human years looks like, I don't know, early to mid-40s at most. Most.
But while this huge finale, that's pretty much most of the movie, is going on outside of his kingdom, he's in there just selfishly thinking about himself and thinking they need to dig deeper and everything. And, of course, that's where his epiphany eventually comes in. But, all these people out there, they're all out there like, where's Thorin? Where is he? Jesus Christ. And then finally the gates blow open and Thorin comes out heroically with his fellow dwarves to go into battle. And apparently they changed the tide of the battle.
13 bros made all the difference when it was only like 500. Yeah, no, it was kind of weird. Like, I mean, not that the characters haven't shown their combat skills in the previous films. I mean, Thorin's very skilled, Keely's very skilled, Feely's very skilled. Everybody, doing boing, bing bong bing. I don't know. God, the Tolkien hardcore boys are gonna get pissed at me.
There's a whole bunch of these guys. There's a lot of dwarves. As a matter of fact, you could argue that cinematically transitioning this into film, it suffers because of how many dwarves there are. Not all of them really get a chance to shine. Like, some of them are just there, and you really aren't too aware of them. Like, there's the one with the part of an axe in his head. I don't really know anything about him as a character.
Yeah, there's only a few others, like
James Nesbitt as Beaufort. He is an Irish celebrity, man. He's, like, really respected in Ireland, so it's kind of funny he didn't get a more prominent dwarf character in this.
Oh, yeah, the dragon fire will melt your flesh off your bones, and, he seems like a fun character, but we don't get to see much of him after the first film.
However, I don't blame this on Peter Jackson exactly. It's not really his fault, because you just have so many characters to adapt. It's just like, it's one of those things that happens when you have to adapt a book. You can't always give everything justice. But maybe if you didn't waste so much time on the stupid romance between Keely and Teriel.
Give the fat dwarf more personality than the fact that he's just the fat dwarf.
And another thing is that the orcs, they said, these orcs were bred for war. For orcs that were birthed to be bred for war, they die really easily.
I mean, they're very berserker-like. I mean, they just run out screaming and gnashing and stuff. But their combat skills don't seem to be that developed. I mean, seriously. I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of times when we're closing up on doing close up on the battle scenes, you're seeing some of the more veteran warriors where you're but at the same time, like, most of these guys went down in one swipe. And again, like, in real war, it's not like you always see in the movies where these, like, sword fight scenes that go on for a half an hour. Like, in real war, sometimes you go down in single slash. But these orcs weren't even putting up... I didn't see one orc that was, like, doing anything impressive, and yet somehow they were still kind of winning the battle until Thorin and his group showed up. They were going down like fucking dominoes. Dominoes bred for war.
But, it's like one dwarf could take on 30 of them before getting killed. So how the hell are these guys winning? They suck. They're the worst warriors ever. Soren, you suck at training orcs. They were the worst thing ever. Oh my god.
And here's a battle strategy. The orcs get to the Lonely Mountain really quick because they use these giant, like, graboids on steroids worms that dig these huge tunnels through the ground. And they use them to dig these tunnels to like skip through land and mountains and hills and stuff to get straight to Lonely Mountain. Why aren't you using these giant monster worms to attack the elves and the dwarves and the humans? Like, you got giant monsters. Use giant monsters.
See, that's like the evil version of the Eagles.
Yeah.
You got the fucking Eagles. Why didn't you fucking fly Frodo to Mount Mordor in the first series?
Let's not get into that. We know, people. Major plot hole. Let it rest.
Yeah, I know.
Let it rest.
Gandalf eventually gets involved in the action. Ian McKellen is always a pleasure to watch. He's, that character is iconic. So awesome. Everyone loves Gandalf.
And we get to see Gandalf the Grey for all 3 films instead of this him with 1 film.
Yeah,
there's a little bit
of
personality difference between when he's gray and white.
Yeah, there's a little bit. He doesn't smoke near as much weed when he's white. He tones down on Token up a little bit.
He had a cleansing, that's why he's white. He got it all out of his system.
He does smoke a little bit. He just doesn't smoke anywhere near as much. When he's Gandalf the Grey, he's just a full-blown stoner. Saruman is like, your love of the halfling's leaf has left you blinded. So I think he loves the Shire weed. But
it'd be funny if it was Pip and Mary who had.
They're his dealers.
Yeah,
Pip and Mary were his dealers.
Like, you don't tell anyone about this. I have a reputation. Just give us the gold, old man.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Did you guys ever tell you about the time I went after a dragon? Okay.
You know the feeling you get when one of your friends is playing a video game, you're sitting there watching, and it's like, I just want to play. You're just watching a bunch of visual effects and a bunch of fight sequences, and it does become a little tedious after a while. It's just a really blown out, and this is actually the shortest movie of the entire series, including Lord of the Rings. This is the shortest Middle-earth film. But you just pounded so much shit into this. If you guys just cut out some of the finale, you could have condensed this into 2 movies. Yes, there's some cool fight sequences. Bard the Bowman, he's doing some cool shit with his sword skills, and Lee Pace, Thranduil, who's kicking some serious ass. So there's some cool things, but there's no meat on it. It's just a bunch of stuff happening.
Yeah, I mean, if we compare it to Return of the King, Return of the King had a ton of battles, had a ton of battle scenes, but it was broken up by non-battle scenes where like the plot is being progressed, or there's a little bit of exposition here and there, just tad bits thrown here and there. With this one, it's like, there's very little breakup in the fights. Which, don't get me wrong, the fight scenes are well choreographed. I think we all enjoyed them, especially the elves with their very graceful and swift, like, slashing techniques, and you got the dwarves who are very, like, direct and stab and crush. All the fight scenes are very enjoyable. It's just like they're not broken up enough. And so, like, I need a little bit of a breather here. Like, can we get,
after a while,
get a bite to eat. That's halftime.
So in Lord of the Rings, there was moments where every now and then an elf would do something that was a little superhuman to do, but that's because he's an elf. It made sense at the levels that they did it. Like there was a sequence where Legolas did a weird kind of flip on top of a mammal he was riding, and then there was a sequence where Legolas rode down the trunk of an elephant after he killed it. Yes, there's some things that were a little outlandish, but in this Hobbit series, it's like ping pong logic. You have dwarfs bouncing off, like they fall down cliffs and they bounce off the cliffs all the way down, not a scratch on them. It takes me out of the movie when it's that outlandish and that unbelievable. You have to ground it a little bit for me, or it's just, like I said, it's like watching a video game. So sometimes when the CGI got really heavy and the physics were just completely out the window, I got a little bored. It just was a little much. We are at the finale of the finale, where Bilbo has joined Thorin for the final fight. Azog killed his grandfather, and Thorin sliced off his arm. So it's very personal between these two.
Yeah.
So you can feel that building, and then unfortunately we lose one of our dwarves. First one we lose is one of the brothers, Feely, played by Dean O'Gorman, and that just builds up the stakes a little bit. At this point, Bilbo gets knocked unconscious, which at least kind of goes with the book, because in the book, if I remember correctly, I might be wrong, all you Lord of the Rings fans, but I think that during the battle, he hid during the whole battle, and you kind of see it from his perspective, and he hears the battle happening, but you don't actually see all the death and mayhem. So it's funny they stretched this finale, this whole battle scene, to 2 hours, when in the book, I think it was only a small section of the book.
Very cool, fun.
Well, then you have also the fight that goes on between Keely and Bolg. Teriel, of course, because her only motivation this whole series is to protect Keely, runs up there to try to save him. They have a lot of this in this movie. They have a lot of the orcs raising a blade, and then suddenly a character jumps on their back and stops them from killing the person.
Yeah, this dude got like jumped on the back, what, like 500 times, and it was weird because, like, once again, you've got Keely, once again, we've established that Keely, like a lot of the other dwarves that we followed, of course, very skilled warrior, good with sword, good with small knives, very skilled. And we got Teriel, who, she's I would say maybe just as equal to Legolas in combat skills. She's very fast, swift, great with a bow, knows how to use her daggers and such. And I get it that this orc is Azog's son, so he's like a bit bigger and stronger, maybe a higher class of battle orc. But at the same time, the fact that it's still these guys have been slaying and killing the orcs throughout throughout these films. Most of them have a pretty high head count. Something they take out a bunch of them, and yet the two of them are having trouble with this one guy who I admit there's some advantages with the size. I admit she was out of arrows and all that, but it just seemed odd that they had so much trouble with them. And we know first punch him in the balls, do something. Do dwarves have balls?
Finally, he fucking stabs Keely in the chest, and they have this big romantic final look at each other. Now, I did like Keely overall as a character, so I was sad to see him go, but I just really could care less about that relationship. One of the most painful moments in the entire series within Thranduil comes up to Teriel, who is holding Keely's dead body, and she's sobbing, and she's like, "Why does it hurt so much?" And he's like, "Because it was real." It's like, alright, a couple of things with that. For one thing, you've been an asshole this entire series up until now. Why you suddenly have a bleeding heart? Yeah. He never showed compassion for anything except himself the entire series, and suddenly he's sympathizing with her. 1. 2, it was real? They only talked 4 times! They barely knew each other. Barely.
Well, I think the only reason why he said that to her is because before that moment, there were a few times in the film where it's brought up that his character became very cold and unremorseful after he lost his wife. So the death of the woman he loves the most. So that's supposed to be the connection to help him sympathize with her. But he really doesn't really turn until a little earlier in the film when Legolas is you know what, I'm not coming back home. You've made I don't like what you've done. I don't like what you're doing as a king, and so I'm not coming back to you. And I guess that statement from Legolas is what changes him up a little bit. But
it's too much.
Yeah, and he's right to don't worry, Toriel, I understand.
Yeah,
I too was in love once. I
didn't believe that transformation at all. And yeah, so I didn't like any of that stuff. And also, my third problem with that moment is, Teriel, how old are you? Are you freaking 5 or 200? You're supposed to be an elf. You are supposed to be one of the oldest creatures that exists on Middle-earth, and here you are crying, asking, why does it hurt so bad? Don't you fucking know after all these hundreds of years you've been alive? Come on! It was so pathetic. It was such a pathetic moment, and to me it almost diminished her strength as a character for her to ask that. And no offense to the actors themselves, they all did great. It's just that whole thing was the worst part of this entire series.
Yeah, I probably will, but I really don't foresee a lot of memes on the internet about, their love was so great. Oh, that's how you do. I wish I was like Toriel and Keely. I wish I had a relationship like them. It's nobody's going to be like that.
Then while this is going on, Legolas is doing some superhero cartoony jumping around on rocks in thin air as they're collapsing off a cliffside, which was ridiculous.
I've seen that, I've seen that.
It's like Super Mario Brothers.
I know, but I've seen that before. Do you remember that when that happened in Hellboy towards the end of the movie when the bridge is collapsing from underneath them?
It was just kind of ridiculous.
I understand what you're saying. I think the problem is when you do a prequel that
it's a Phantom Menace effect.
I wasn't. Well, here's the thing. So when you do a prequel, sometimes people add what I like to call the sequel augmentation to it. What I mean by that is when you see a sequel to a big hit movie in the sequel, you expect it to be better than the first one. You expected the action to be better, or the plot to be better, or the characters to be more powerful. You expect things to get better, like in action adventure films. You expect things to get to a higher level. I think that's what happened here with the prequel, since it's been such a long time since the last Lord of the Rings movie came out, Return of the King. So I think they accidentally went with that route where they wanted to make Legolas even better.
The stakes don't feel high.
Exactly.
If you can run on blocks in thin air, then I don't feel threatened anymore.
Yeah. There's like that scene in Desolation of Smog where like the really obese dwarf, he's caught in the barrel in that scene where they're all in the barrels are going down the river, and his barrel gets up and it's like rolling and killing like 80 orcs as he's bouncing. It felt like Donkey Kong, like all these orcs were little like Marios and the barrels were like
It's like ping 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 ping.
Yeah.
And by the way, I really enjoy Orlando Bloom as Legolas, but he did not serve much of a role in this new series, and he's also very clearly older and grouchier in comparison to Lord of the Rings.
The Eagles are used in the exact same way they're used in The Return of the King. During the finale battle, when all hope seems to be lost, suddenly the Eagles show up and change the tide of the battle. Same thing happens in this, where all hope seems to be lost, and suddenly the Eagles show up and change the tide of the battle. Of course, the bad guys have bats, but, you know, we got the Eagles. They can take on the bats.
They're big bats. We fed them like Wheaties. Very cool battle. I like the fight between Thorin and Zog, is it?
Azog.
Azog. Not Zog, he's Azog.
Yeah.
Very cool. I mean, Azog was definitely bringing his brutal tactics, swinging a block of stone attached to a chain like it was a mace, and Thorin has to dodge this big thing, and then he uses they're fighting on a frozen lake top or some frozen like waterfall or something. And Thorin uses the ice to his advantage because Azog does have a definite size advantage, as strong as a dwarf is.
It was kind of weird because Azog throws his giant like chain block down and gets stuck in the ice, and he can't lift it. He's sitting there trying to tug it, and then Thorin just looks down at it. He lifts it like it's nothing. He just tosses it to him. It's like, dude, you're only like 5 feet tall.
Dwarves are just really, as small as they are, they're very strong. I remember how they like picked up the stones and like built that wall for in the entrance to the Lonely Mountain. I mean, dwarves are
they're strong, but like an orc is probably supposed to be stronger. I mean, that guy was huge. He was like 7 foot.
I know. I don't know. It's like a fun way to beat him. So I like that aspect.
We didn't actually beat him.
Well, he almost beat him.
So they kill each other. Thorin is a character that early in the movie really irritated a lot of people, audience and character alike, and then at this point you're just love the guy again, you just don't want to see him go like this. But he does have a very sweet moment with Bilbo where Bilbo wakes up and he finds him and he holds him, and this was in the book actually. In the book, I believe that Bilbo came out of hiding after the battle was fought and Thorin was dying, and he ran over to Thorin and Thorin apologized for how he treated him before with the Arkenstone. And Thorin regains his honor.
Well, Thorin, he starts out as this very... I would make him akin to, not in all ways, but in many ways, to Vegeta from the Dragon Ball Z universe, so only anime fans will know what I'm talking about here. He's from royalty, proud heritage, and that's his big thing, his pride. It's that pride that really makes him so arrogant and really an ass at times. I mean, he treats Bilbo horribly. I mean, why are you treating the guy that's going to steal your stone back for you so you can be a king again? Help you out. Like I know Bilbo is an adventurer, but he treats him badly. But you can see he's doing what he thinks he's doing because it's a betterment for his people. It's just like he's very cold about it.
He's also under the influence of the Arkenstone at those points. So he was nicer to Bilbo in the earlier movies.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about like when we first meet him, the way he is, because he's very hard to get along with. Period. As time goes on, he softens up a little bit in certain ways, especially when it comes to Bilbo, because him and Bilbo actually become friends. They actually do care about each other. A good character, a complicated character. Interesting, and
How did you feel about his exit from this world of Middle-earth?
I think that was the only way. I think that's a logical way for it to end. I mean, because he accomplished his mission. He got his people their mountain back. He regained his honor, and I mean, yes, the bloodline is cut, but he went out fighting like a true dwarven warrior.
The humans and elves and dwarves all kind of make peace, and for now the orcs and Sauron have been pushed at bay, and Christopher Lee's out there looking for Sauron, and we already know where that leads.
Yeah.
And Bilbo returns home a little wiser, a little richer, with a new set of friends. And
Minus the fact that they raided his house.
yes, he comes back home and he sees that his house has been pretty much auctioned.
Yeah.
But, then we go to the Lord of the Rings timeline to see Ian home one last time as he gets a knock from a good old friend, Gandalf the Grey, behind the door to smoke some weed with him. And,
That good kush.
and that's our bookend to the movie.
Yeah.
That takes us back into Lord of the Rings.
I don't know. The film was okay. I wish I had seen a lot more. I wasn't because the way they were building up, especially with the trailers and the commercials, that this is going to be just as epic as Return of the King. And it wasn't. It tried. It didn't completely fail. So it's kind of like, you got like 80% there, but there's like a lot in that 20% it didn't get. So
80%, that's pretty generous.
I'm a nice guy.
Yeah, I have the same feeling. I really wanted them to condense this a lot more. It was too spread out, too bloated. And I think you could have easily done this in 2 movies. And it could have been a much stronger story. There was just a lot of shit that they needed to tone down. And, because of that, in the end, it's a big step down from Lord of the Rings, because it is just a lot of bloated stuff. I mean, Lord of the Rings, they had almost too much material to draw from. So in that one, they had to pick and choose what material they were going to use, but in this one, they didn't have enough, so they just added and added and added and added. And I'm sorry, guys, while you're good screenwriters, you're not as good of a storyteller as J.R.R. Tolkien. Okay? You guys can't compare to him in terms of narrative structure and stuff like that, so it just didn't quite add up. But I don't want to totally trash it, even though it's a disappointment. It still was a great time at cinema. It was still fun. I still love the world of Middle-earth. It had great visual effects. And Peter Jackson, even though I don't always agree with some of the choices that he made, I do think that he handled it overall very well. The performances are all strong. Everything else is good about it. It's a very well-made movie. It just needed a lot of editing, a lot more structure. Peter Jackson, you created, in general, a masterpiece with just a few faults in the Hobbit series, and it's been such a huge part of my geek life. So thank you for that. It's sad. This is it, man. This is the end of our journey through Middle-earth in the cinematic universe until someone remakes it, or until Peter Jackson creates a whole new trilogy that never existed before.
Exactly.
Which could happen.
Wasn't there some stuff in that Silmarillion? Write a script! Well, everybody, hope you really enjoyed our review of The Hobbit, The Battle of Five Armies. If you did, click like, leave us a comment, tell us your thoughts on it, and hey, if you really liked it, click share and spread the nerd word. Until the next time, I'm Vincent.
And I am Mike.
And this is Review the Nerds.
The greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said. The chances, the changes are all yours to make. The mold of your life is in your hands to break.